I can't believe you're speaking this. Do you know that you're going to disrupt the coaching industry? And I'd say, yeah, I know, I am. And people deserve to have access to coaching. We couldn't just keep coaching one-on-one at a C level. My dream has always been, let's get real people involved in the coaching conversation. And one of the main ways to do that, beyond a pro bono arrangement, is group, where it is about accessibility, where it is about harnessing the power of the collective, where you don't know what you're going to do when you bring 3, 5, 20 different people who have all different backgrounds together. For some, that's true disruption. So I just offer that up because the Ecosystem Connector, really, it's a very amazing skill series and presence. Hi, I'm Jennifer Britton, and welcome to the CoachingMany Podcast. I've been on a mission for the last 20 years to expand the coaching conversation to many. Along with my co-host, Evana Valle, we're going to be exploring coaching as it relates to conversations, connection, and change in both personal and professional settings. CoachingMany is about creating empowering and thought-provoking spaces for conversation which strengthen relationships and enhance results. Throughout the CoachingMany podcast, we'll share tools, practices, and approaches to support you in your conversations, one dialogue at a time. Hey, Evana, welcome back. Today, we are exploring another team and group coaching superpower. Today, the Ecosystem Connector. So I went to my phone. I actually love the Ecosystem Connector. It's the third most popular in the research database that we've been doing over the last 3.5 years. Here's a quote from Rachel Carson, who is often known as, well, she is one of the seminal environmentalists. She says, in nature, nothing exists alone. Everything is connected. Changes to one part of the ecosystem can have ripple effects on other parts. So that was part of the background of why I actually called the Ecosystem Connector, because I think there really are coaches who bring such an amazing strength in the ability to connect the dots, help people see the meta view, and also recognize that, yes, one change will have a ripple effect in other places. So what, as we step into today's episode, exploring the Ecosystem Connector, what comes to mind for you?
Well, even with what you just said, it makes me think of potentials realized. It makes me think of the ripple effect. It makes me think of the logo and what you stand for and what I stand for with this collaboration at potentials realized, right? Even how you demonstrate the different ecosystems you support, the creatives, right? The coaches, the entrepreneurs. I think it's a real beautiful demonstration. And even within my own work, it's like what is the connector in the work that I do, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's really important that we see that in ourselves, in our own work, especially when we are going through those rough waters, we'll say, or challenges, but also so that way we can really stand and be with the people we're having conversations with, whether it be one-on-one, group, or teams. And that's why I really appreciate you advocating and you saying, like, it's not about having one superpower. It's how do we activate this range? And so I'm really excited that today we get to bring in the spotlight on the Ecosystem Connector and what that looks like, maybe what that tastes like, what that sounds like in the CoachingMany or around the kitchen table.
Yeah. And I think very much, if you aren't familiar with and you're going, what are they talking about? So our latest series of episodes here at the CoachingMany Podcast have been about the presence of the coach. It's been about our superpowers. And one of the 5 is the Ecosystem Connector. Now, here's something important to recognize. As a coach of many, as a coach who's working with a diversity of individuals, if you're in a team, you're working on a collective, even in a group, you're navigating between that individual layer and the collective layer. And what is important is to really be able to expand our range as a coach, being able to hold for all the variety, all the different ways we see and be in the world as a coaching client. I would also assert, and we've had a few people actually go through our Activate Your Group and Team Coaching Superpower CCE program recently who have taken this into their teams. So, with people who are not coaches, and those teams have embraced this widely. I had one of our alumni recently call us to say, Jen, that was just the most engaging conversation I've ever had with my team. They loved it. They also brought in the little keychains, which I don't have with me right now, but I thought it was fun that they were actually able to incorporate not only a discussion about how, what is your superpower as a team member or a coach, but what is important about that and what should people know about you? So this is a doorway opener for awareness on a couple of levels. One, for us as a coach, but if we're bringing it into our work with clients, it's also an opportunity to really help them ground themselves and think about presence, which is a core skill set for anyone in the world of work, the world of life right now. So,
Yeah.
as you can see, I'm sort of animated. I launched this quiz 3.5 years ago. Thousands of people have taken it, and I've talked a lot about it. So again, it is something that we offer a course around, Activate Your Group and Team Coaching Superpower, so that you can go out and actually lead this in your own business, which is the fun thing. So I think you've taken it with me, right? You've gone through Activate. And
Yeah.
what are you thinking about when you think of, like, today we're zooming into Ecosystem Connector, but we have done other episodes. So what do you think is important for people to know about? And it may not be related to the Ecosystem Connector.
I think that what I think is really important is the fact that we really need to have that level of self-awareness of what our superpower is. But when you talk about presence, it's really like, are we actually present? Are we listening? Are we engaged to what is actually in the conversation, but also maybe what needs to be brought in. Do you know what I mean? And that doesn't mean we have to bring it in as the coach. We can bring in our intuitive hit, but it can also just be that powerful question, because oftentimes I think what I see in my own groups and my own conversations often is the power of that connection is what actually activates the individual, in terms of, if I hear Jen Britton say something in a conversation, it will naturally, because like you said, and like the beautiful quote said, we're naturally interconnected. So what you share will actually can activate something in me. And in doing so, I think what's really powerful is there's that activation, but there's also that connectionness, that validation for you, especially, and it happens in my conversations all the time, that people are having their discoveries, their ahas, but they're also being seen, heard, and validated through someone saying, wow, I never thought of it like that. Or that doesn't resonate with me, but this does from what you said.
Yeah.
And so I think the natural space of having that container where it's okay to have people start connecting the dots, whether it is the coach who supports that or whether it's the coach supporting that through creating the space, through creating the silence, through the pause.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you zoom us into connection, right? Because connection really, we have stood for this for 20 years here at Potentials Realize. Really, like, our work is all about human connection. And in the evolving era of AI, everyone is also saying, oh, it's really important to be about connection. But, I would assert we take it even one more layer deeper, right? It's about connection on all those layers that we've talked about in our earlier episode here. I think it was episode maybe 12, 6 layers of connection our listeners can look up. And it really is about connection on multiple layers. So it's about connecting for results, connecting for relationships, but connecting for change. And, one of the key skill sets for the future is going to be pattern spotting. I would say that the ecosystem connector is an advocate for pattern spotting. They may have that innate ability and are good at helping their peers start to notice the patterns, or at least surface the question like, hey, team, what are we noticing as we go? So there's lots of layers to this. It's not just about being and ecosystem connector. It's also about incorporating or building these skill sets that these different approaches or personas or architects bring. And it's interesting. I've been talking about this now for 3.5 years, and people, do I only do one? And it's like, no, we want to embody all of them because these are what creates a whole complementary sort of, I'll say 360, although the 360 view is really that of the spiral lighthouse coach, but it is core that we really try to cultivate all of these. So I was at the thrift store on the weekend and came across a great book from IDEO that looks at the 10 faces of innovation from their persona standpoint. And I should have brought it with me to this recording because there was a few quotes from the author that was just like, oh, this is so brilliant. How they also talked about this notion that you don't want to just step into one. It can be valuable to step into all. And this framework is not intended to box anyone in. It's actually intended to invite us to say, which stance am I in right now? And what could this individual, this group, or this team benefit from? So
I can say for myself, this superpower framework has not constricted me at all. It's expanded me. It's actually brought blind spots to my coaching that I was not even aware of, that now I bring some more intentionality in. And just to reinforce, episode 12 is the 6 layers of connection. And it's really around being the doing, the having, right? Which we've done an episode on that, but also being present to know what is needed in this conversation. Even helping people connect emotions is part of the ecosystem connector, right? We talked about the systems. We talked about even ideas, patterns, because I toggle back and forth if I believe this or not, is how you do one thing is how you do everything. And so this idea, I go, and then I'm like, oh, so I'm still on the fence about, but there is something to be said about it when we're thinking about how we be in the world, how we show up in the world, how we show up in group. And it just came to me. I don't know why, but it's just come to me. I'm thinking about even the dynamics of the personalities in our groups. And how does an ecosystem connector be with that and support that? And how does that even show up in design?
Totally.
Right?
It shows up on all layers. It shows up on how we grow our businesses. It shows up on what we pay attention to, what we don't pay attention to, right? So what really tweaked me in like years ago, because it's been 20 years, in January, it'll be 20 years of training group and team coaches. One-on-one, it's like, really dig deep into who you are. But once you're in a group context or a team context, we now may have 3, 5, 10, 15, 50, 100 people in front of us, especially if we are actually co-coaching. And so we really need to be that chameleon. We really, to serve our clients fully, we need to grow our presence. And so while yes, how we are one thing is how we maybe are all other things, I do feel that with experience and mastery, we actually need to grow our width, not just our depth. And that's an ongoing discussion, right? But I think we are in the era of not specialization, but generalization. All elements, all fingers are pointing in times of complexity and change and disruption. You've got to be a generalist. You've got to be able to scale the silos that exist in the world. And so, again, that's a pretty ecosystem connector standpoint as well, right? The ecosystem connector is very good at noticing all the elements that are necessary for a healthy ecosystem. And that's key. This could be an ecosystem, but is it on collapse or is it on growth? And that is, to any environmentalist, a question we're always asking. Every human and maybe now every artificial system will have a life cycle.
Yeah. And I can't help but say it is not our job as the coach to fix the collapsing ecosystem.
Yeah.
It is, right? What is our role?
To be with.
is our role. Yeah, to be with, to highlight,
Yeah.
to invite conversation,
Mm-hmm.
to invite dialogue, whether it be within in a team context or a group context.
Yeah.
This shows up a lot in group coaching essentials, especially people who are just starting on, they're expanding their portfolio to groups. And they're like,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know how I'm going to be able to manage all these different dynamics. I do it really well one-on-one. And just to reinforce what you said, it is that generalist, but it is not ours to do something.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is ours to use our competencies, our listening, our
Mm-hmm.
powerful questions, our intuition, our activation of, what we're seeing, what we notice, the patterns we're noticing, and
Yeah.
inviting dialogue.
And growing the skill. Yesterday at Mentor Coaching Group, we were looking at competency 5, growing our capacity for being with not knowing.
Yeah.
How comfortable are we with that? I think this is actually where a lot of coaches who are shifting from one-on-one to group and or team get trapped. They're not comfortable in not knowing. There's a lot of ego that can be involved. And I may get backlash for this, but I think I look at the resistance factors of people who really stood their ground early 20 years ago, who when they heard me talk would actually come up to me and say, I can't believe you're speaking this. Do you know that you're going to disrupt the coaching industry? And I'd say, yeah, I know, I am. And people deserve to have access to coaching. We couldn't just keep coaching one-on-one at a C level. My dream has always been let's get real people involved in the coaching conversation. And one of the main ways to do that, beyond a pro bono arrangement, is group, where it is about accessibility, where it is about harnessing the power of the collective, where you don't know what you're going to do when you bring 3, 5, 20 different people who of all different backgrounds together. For some, that's true disruption. So I just offer that up because the ecosystem connector, really, it's a very amazing skill series and presence space. It's not just about you, and you've said it multiple times already. It's about the doing, the being, and the having. And what can we bring more of if we embrace or embody the ecosystem connector? So there's a bit of an inquiry here for everyone to really be thinking about, when you hear ecosystem connector, which is 2 pieces, what are you noticing? Do you gravitate to the connector piece? Do you gravitate to the ecosystem piece? What does it mean to step in or be part of an ecosystem? What does systemic mean in your work right now? So I leave it as an inquiry.
Beautiful. And with what you're saying, what really percolated for me was this whole thing of uncertainty. And there's in my language, I'll say that surrendering to the unknown. And underneath all that is really trust.
Complete, like capital T bold trust.
Trust in the participants, trust in the team, trust in self, trust that you don't have to know. And again, I go back to think, like, if I reflect on my own journey on this, which is ongoing, trust, I think is a human lifelong journey.
Absolutely.
But even as a newer coach, I remember how much I felt like I had to know.
Yeah.
And then when I started doing groups, that percolated. I'd put it to rest in one-on-one and that percolated, but it was my awareness of my own patterns, of that need, of that, as we'll say, for me, my ego wanting to look good and doing a good job and doing my people proud. And that actually got in the way of actually having them do their work.
Yes. Yeah. Because if we're over controlling, right, we do not give oxygen. Every system needs oxygen in order to breathe and thrive. Truly? Yes, I think. Even an amoeba, right? Like, it's like that's biological function 101. And so what are we doing? What are we doing to give space, to give air, to give the resources necessary for for not just living, but thriving. I would really assert this is where we get into some really interesting layers of, are you surviving or are you thriving? And an
Mhm.
ecosystem connector may be asking that question on a regular basis. They're going to be attuned to that.
Yeah.
They're going to be inquiring and inviting the system they're working with to think about those types of questions. So hopefully we're giving you some food for thought, right? There's multiple layers here. There also are, this may be a growth edge. I'm recognizing this may be a growth edge for some. If you've listened to the other superpowers, and we did Grounded Labyrinth, which has always been my growth edge, because really I'm about speed. I'm not about slowing down. But if I can't bring that to my clients, then what am I, quote unquote, robbing them of? What am I not allowing for? And same thing with Ecosystem Connector.
Yeah. I have in my notes, and I'm going to have you talk to it because I can't talk to it as well as you can. So in my notes from the program, the growth edge we talked about was that simplicity beyond complexity. And it was, you had referred to David Clutterbuck
Mm-hmm.
in some way.
So David's done so much work in adaptive leadership, right? And I think that's where this notion of, what are you aware of in terms of complexity theory and coaching around complexity? And there has always been a notion in systems theory of the simplicity is beyond the complexity. If you listen to my second TED Talk, it really is about the mantra of embrace the chaos, which was sort of a word of advice, if I may say, from my mentor supervisor in the academic realm. When I started my career way, way many moons ago, like more than 30 plus years ago, I asked her, I said, what do you do as a woman leading in this space? What's important for me to know? I was 22 years old. I was baby Jen. And she said, Jen, just embrace the chaos. And that's been a mantra that I have carried with me, and like a bag, I have like opened and closed it. I have like put it inside out and really like examined all the little edges of this statement of what does it mean to really embrace the chaos. Part of it involves stepping into that space of deep, deep trust on all levels and simplifying. It's not about adding complexity to a world of complexity. It's about simplifying. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I really appreciate that because I think it's really important that people hear that, especially in the reality that we're all in, and whether it be at a global level, a
Hmm.
country level, a family level, an individual level,
Yeah.
because change is certain. And sometimes with change, there is complexity, there is chaos. So to embrace
Yeah.
the chaos. And I love what you said because I needed to hear that for myself. It's like the simplicity. It's like I think of like breaking it down into steps, like chunking it down. What's the next thing? Whether it be
Hmm.
at an individual level, at a group level. Okay, there's a lot being said here.
Yeah.
There's a lot that we want to explore. What's the next thing that's going to support us?
Yeah.
And that would, I think, would be relevant as a team, at a
Absolutely.
team level.
Or like even the more basic question of like, what are you connecting with? Right?
Yeah.
What are you seeing that everyone is connecting with? So really, how do we also build the capability of the group or the team we're working with to see things in a collective space as well?
Mhm.
So there is another layer to the ecosystem connector stance of seeing and being in the world, in the collective, and going back to Rachel Carson, right? Like I read Rachel back in the 90s, early 90s, and like we had to read her, but very much she was an advocate for the health of ecosystems in the US. If you've never heard her story, I think it's really important that we do reclaim as is part of the movement of this is like, why do we do this? Well, one thing that happens upstream will have a ripple effect all the way downstream. And so I think the ecosystem connector can help us see that. And I would say, it's interesting in organizational discussions these days, that upstream, downstream analogy. It's almost rife. Like I think I was in conversations last week, and honestly, I think I heard that terminology about 12 times in the span of about 4 hours. So it's interesting. Like, I think the language of the ecosystem connector is actually starting to be influencing discourse. And our words do create worlds. So,
Mhm.
how do we also, in our work, in our questioning, invite people to connect with ecosystems on all levels? As
Mhm.
you said, the global, the personal, I would assert the natural environment, the
Right.
built environment,
Right.
the organizational environment. As an environmentalist by training, it's not just about the nature or the human element. It's also about our interweave and our ability to navigate and connect the built, the organizational, the social, the political, the environmental, and economic
Mhm.
ecosystems, which sounds complex, but again, like in that complexity, you start seeing the patterns. So I hope for many listening that this is not just like, what is she talking about? That you actually sit with this for a little bit because it is sophisticated. It is maybe not something that you have naturally been educated around, socialized
Mhm.
around. We have, most of us, not all of us, but some listeners may have been in educational systems which have been disciplinary. I would say the ecosystem connector is the true multidisciplinarian. They are the ones that are comfortable in jumping from area to area that historically we have
Mhm.
boxed, but I would assert in this times of radical change and transformation that is happening right now, we need to become agile in reaching across, in being able to step into different perspectives and embrace different perspectives in service to the overall well-being of the ecosystem.
Yeah. Wow. Can I say? And as you're saying that, a few things came to mind. One is that in CTI training, we learned the small a to the big A. And so even how does that look in terms of our conversations and how do we take
Mhm.
what we got here and how it relates to the bigger A agenda for those, and then I'm also just thinking like how even in corporate when I many moons ago, like that those silos and yet
Silence.
the importance of that interconnectedness, like nature is
Mhm.
a real beautiful way to, like as a metaphor to see how we're all connected,
Yeah.
how we treat our through the cars that we drive, through,
Yeah. The
our
purchases we
own
make.
habits, the purchases
Yeah.
we make, the
It's the
even
micro and macro. And,
yeah.
it's interesting. I recently had someone say, I really liked your article, but you're making a lot of assumptions. And I realized I write from a space that is not their worldview. And so I think it's important that we become a little, or I will say, it's not we, it's an I. I need to become more bold in owning the philosophy that I adhere to, because I do believe that our micro choices create macro ripple. It is not something that we're disconnected from. If I do not stand my ground, what will happen? Things, like again, things are all connected from the stance of the ecosystem connector.
And what you're talking about, Jen, to me is that 7 generation thinking,
Yeah.
but also like even like how what the choices I make today will affect my immediate surroundings. Like that ripple
You
effect
need,
as we started, right? Like that ripple effect, whether it be different systems, environmental, organizational, relational, family,
hmm
whatever that is. And
hmm
and I love what you said is and you owned it as a first person I think, but I'm going to say I also have to do that. I have to be more bold and I invite our listeners, what is it that what does that look like? What does that mean for you to be more bold in what you stand in for that ecosystem that you support, that
and the
relational
ecosystem that you're part of, right? Because
and the
we are a
ecosystem
natural part of the
yeah.
fabric. And when the fabric
Oh,
starts to erode, we see interesting things. I don't want
yeah.
us to be shadow banned, so I will not say it. But,
Mm.
this is a counterpoint to the let them. This is not a let them. This is a I own it and I am part of it and I'm an integral part of it because my impact will have a ripple effect.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
with that, we leave you with that, listeners. I hope you'll come back next time we're going to sit down with some people who really lead from this space. And again, it's something that we invite you to consider. What can you bring? What is available to you when you really embrace or embody or stand in this perspective? What is possible for you, but more importantly, what is possible for the people that you're working with? And if you are in an environment where you have people who are really coming in with this perspective, if we're not allowing for that oxygen, what is not being realized in terms of the potential and the possibilities of that system, truly. Another reason why I called this business Potentials Realized. So maybe I have a little bit more ecosystem connector in me than I like to think. I think I do. It's just so buried and part of my DNA that I never really see it. But it's part of the match. So Evana, what are you taking from today's discussion dialogue?
I'm taking so much. I'm taking the fact that upstream, downstream, that around, whether I'm supporting it, whether I'm in an ecosystem, and how I show up and how I trust and participate in that ecosystem is going to have a ripple effect both on my relationships, on the connections I have, but also on those results. And I'm going to just throw in something that we have, a word that we haven't used, but I think is really part of this, just as a closing thought, is in groups and teams, is that co-creation.
Completely.
The element of co-creation. And what does that look like? Again, whether you're having dinner with your family or having a conversation, to bring voices in, to allow that co-ownership, that co-creation, so we can be empowered and have a healthy, vital ecosystem.
Yeah. That's growing, that's evolving and not dying. And that's not a happy thought, but I think there is an interesting, I think Ecosystem Connector actually is very good at being with the natural dichotomies and polarities that exist. That's a whole other conversation that we could have and should have another day. But I think, again, there's a polarity of the growth and the decline. Yeah. What does that mean? And how are we holding the space for both as a coach? That is truly the inquiry of the day. So,
yes.
With that, thanks for being good listeners. Listeners, let us know your thoughts, even if it is counterpoint, right? An ecosystem connector needs to invite all voices into the room, which may not be the most popular way, but if we don't have all voices, then what is not real? What is not being fashioned?
Yeah. It doesn't reflect the ecosystem.
Exactly. All right. We'll see you soon, listeners. Take care and thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe and like and pass this on to your colleagues. I would say as well, you'll find a link to the Group and Team Coaching Superpower quiz. So take 2 minutes, do it on your phone. See what is the primary, but you want to embrace all of these to really hold the space. All right. Take care, everyone. Be well.